What is up, everybody? Ed Gow Jr. here from Dad Central, and beside me,
Drew Solon from Dad Central.
Drew always goes, what is he going to do with each intro? Each intro is different, so I got to keep him on the go. We are here with the Dad Central show, and it's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there is a positive impact. Drew, we've done 12.
Yeah.
We've done 12 of these. So this is I guess we're the 13th. I don't know if that's lucky or unlucky. This is the 13th episode, maybe.
I didn't even think about that, but thank you for bringing it up. We'll go with lucky number 13.
So how you feeling after 12 conversations?
I feel like I would just need at least 12 or 24 more. They've been so good. And it's really been surprising to see how quickly they've gone. At least it feels that way for us, and how much value I've taken away just from those 12 conversations. So I hope the people who are listening are taking away some value too. And if you are, we'll remind you just to share the show with others. Let them know that you're getting something from it, and where they can come and listen as well. And so also, if you have any comments for us, we'd love to hear. So rate our show, review it. Give us that feedback. It's really helpful for us to continue making sure that we bring conversations that offer a lot of value. So it's not just about me and me taking value from the conversations, or you taking value from the conversations. That it's about our listeners and what they're taking.
Absolutely. I was excited from the get-go, and my excitement level has just risen just hearing fathers share some of their journeys, sometimes some intimate stories from their journey that I feel that they haven't shared with too many people, and they're sharing them through us to you to help in parenting. So I think it's been a great journey so far. The 12 have been fantastic. And because we've done 12, we're going to just have a sort of like reflections from the first 12 shows. Drew has some, I have some. We're just going to go back and forth and just share some of these moments, how they've had impact on us, and hopefully they've had impact on you. So I'm going to let Drew kick it off. So number one, first one in Drew's, and not in order, but the first one he just gave to me. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I think the opportunity to reflect can be very valuable just in the process of, growing yourself, but importantly, when you think about how do you learn. And so the goal here is to give dads tools to help raise confident, successful kids. And I think the more that we learn and continuously grow, the better it is. And so it's kind of a way for us to reflect and share with you a quick hit. So this show will hopefully, if you only listen to this one, then you're going to take something of value from all of these past conversations. So that's another part of the reason for today. So my first one is starting way back with our first show, where we had Trevor Linden, 20-year NHL veteran, highly successful individual, and many Canadians would know him very much as Captain Canada for all of his work on as a hockey player. But it was great to talk to him as a dad. And I think what stood out to me was his message of work on yourself as a dad, so your imperfections don't negatively affect your kids. Not what you'd maybe expect to hear from someone who's achieved the fame and success that he has about working on yourself. So it really stood out to me because I think he was very candid about a time in his life, I think he was still probably playing, where he felt he needed help. He said, I was struggling with something and I just needed, and he said, I went to therapy. I think that really stood out to me because there are many men who probably would never do that. They say, no way, I'm not going to go talk to anyone else. I don't need help. I got this. But here was someone who's at the top of his game who said, I need help. And I think that candor has really stood out to me as a great model of, hey, we all can have times where we need some support, and there's value to it, especially when he says, don't let your imperfections negatively affect your kids, because I think his quote was, we're all broken people. We've all had stuff that we've gone through. And when we don't work on healing or resolving that stuff, it then can come out in our parenting. And I know for a fact, having 3 kids, there are moments when those children will create things in you that you're like, where did that come from? And that's really actually a sign. It's not a bad thing. It's a sign that there's something deeper there that you can work on. So it was really powerful to hear him share that.
He was very powerful and very insightful. Other things that he shared, becoming a surrogate father at 47 years old. That was, I did not have any idea about that from him, but just his reflection on that experience in itself, that was a huge knowledge bomb right there. Another thing that I found interesting is that he was someone you really wanted to have on the show.
What made that so interesting for you?
Well, it's always interesting, I think, for a lot of people that when I know that you wanted to have on the show. There was a little bit of doubt. I was going, Drew, have confidence. Have confidence. He's a human being just like you and I. He walks and talks. And from my perspective, that's, I think that broke a major barrier, a wall for you. That, yeah, he's famous, athlete, all that, but he's just like us. He's
It's
just
really
like
interesting
us.
to hear you say that. You're right. Absolutely, he is. I coach people for a living, and many a times I was coaching these business students who would go and, oh man, who am I going to reach out to? And they're getting ready to have these networking conversations. And some of them would get connected with a VP or even a CEO, and they would be feeling very nervous. And so what you're telling me is that I was just like my coaching students. I was very nervous
We
about
all
having
have
this.
that once in a while, right? We either all have it or once in a while we've been through it. So I thought it was just really, just the way you handled the conversation. And I know at the beginning you had this, oh my gosh, but you just handled it really good, man. You did a great job.
It's funny because I would tell my students, they're just a person like you. They've gone to school, they probably have a family, they're
Yeah,
just like you. So it's just another conversation between two adults. And yeah,
absolutely.
thankfully, it turned out to be a great conversation
Oh
between
yeah.
three adults, Trevor,
Yeah.
myself, and you. And
Oh, you're
I think it
welcome. Thank you for
provided
the
a lot.
compliment. Thank you for regarding me as an adult. Some people, I don't know, that's all good. But no, I thought he was really, really good. And, he really set like some good foundation for the journey that we've been on. And he was just so relaxed. He was just so open. And there's a part of me that says that he doesn't have too many conversations like the one we had with him.
Mm. Well, maybe he'll have some more. And I know that we're hoping the conversation we had with him really sparks a lot of reflection or a lot of work for dads because they've consumed it. So we actually are so thrilled with Trevor. We're producing and about to put it out there. Trevor Linden's top 10 um, steps to raise confident, successful kids because he gave us so much insight and wisdom. So we've created a guide that has Trevor's insight. It has quotes from the show, and then we've got a reflection question for a dad, and then we've got an action step for how can you take this and apply it to your situation right now as a dad. So if you can, go ahead and click on in the show notes the link and download that because it's going to be a great help to anyone who's a dad. So really excited for that to get out there and have people consuming it and benefiting from Trevor's wisdom that he gave us in that conversation. How about
Excellent.
you, Edno? Let's hear one of your moments.
Well, the National At Home Dad Network, and it was wonderful. Like I had been watching some of their broadcasts and following them for a little while before we started the show, and just the whole aspect of at home dads. So let's cycle back. In the last few years, many dads were forced to stay at home. And I found it very interesting being involved in this heart work with dads and fathers and men, the perspectives I was getting from them during this time during the pandemic, how they were handling it, how many fathers had a light bulb come on saying, wow, my role in my family, this is what it's all about. This is what I'm not seeing when I'm in the workplace or where I'm out doing certain things. And then to find an organization that's been around for a while in the US that has a community of at home dads. Just phenomenal to get their perspectives, phenomenal to, there was one gentleman, no, a number of the gentlemen at home dads for a number of years, and just getting their wisdom, getting their insight from their community about being a stay-at-home dad because it's becoming more prevalent post-pandemic, or some people say the pandemic isn't finished, but in our next phase of what we call life. That was a really great conversation. And they were so happy to get, we had about four or five members from their team on. So that was really great. And it made, at least from my end, us feel real validated that they bring that many members of their organization to come share with our audience. That felt amazing. Really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And also, too, one of them saying society not being fair to dads. And this is something that's still continuing today, that I remember one of them sharing about they had their child in a carriage at the park and they're getting like funny looks from mothers and almost being like stereotyped that, you know, fathers are only supposed to be this, and this. And this is a continual thing that many fathers want to break that mold. And that's one of the reasons why we do what we do at Dad Central. We want to break that mold, break that stigma of fatherhood. And it was great to get an organization that's doing it hard every day. They had, and also to the diversity of the gentlemen that were on. There was actually a gentleman from the Latinx community that is part of their team. So it was really good to get that perspective on fatherhood. And again, seeing dads need to stop being labeled. So I really found that really strong commentary and presence from that organization. So it was a great conversation.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear the perspective where they don't feel welcomed or they don't feel accepted, even though they love and embrace their roles as stay-at-home dads. And they are as invested in that role as any CEO of a company or any other traditional male role that people might have. And that is, I think, a challenge that we're often caught with, creating perceptions and labels that aren't actually true or really put people into these defined boxes. As a man, you can't be a full-time parent, and we do run into real challenges with that. So it was very important, I think, to hear directly from that group about their experiences. But on the flip side, it was really powerful to see what happens when they came together in community to be able to find support and to find resources and to create additional resources within the group and to share out with others so that they can feel valued and validated in their role. And of course, I would imagine, speaking to their partners, they probably are valued and validated quite often for the work they're doing and recognizing, of course, that. So I think that's really important there. Just for all of us, if we can recognize, how do we just value another person for who they are, for what they're at, as opposed to try and put them into those boxes. That really stood out for me. But the community piece was very important. So yeah, I think that's a really good one.
Good stuff. Well, back to you.
Okay. Another moment for me was talking with Donnovan Bennett. And I think it really stood out when he shared about the influence of his father. I mean, there are many moments he talked about his father and his father's influence on him, but in particular, his father had a family motto. He talked about it being almost put up in the house, that it had this saying, and it was, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. And so I just feel like the way Donnovan spoke about it and what I saw coming out of him was, it told me the importance of a father's influence in really shaping a child's perspective as they're growing. When you think about how Donnovan shared about that and how it's influenced Donovan's career and what he's done and the impact that he's having, you can really see that coming to life because he lives that out as well. Because the other thing I heard is his father's influence. He would go out with his father and he would observe his father, how he would behave, how he would act in business things, how he'd carry himself, how he'd dress, and the really crucial pieces of insight that his father shared with him as he observed him and as he grew that really impacted Donnovan. And so for me, the takeaway there is the importance of a father's example and influence as a child's growing and what that means for them as they move on into their life. And that really stood out to me. And I think Donovan's a great example of that.
Yeah, I fully agree. And it's interesting because we're getting a view of Donovan's journey of fatherhood, because when we first spoke with him, this is before the show, we had him on a webinar, and that time he only had one child. Now he's got two. So it's very interesting to see his positive journey of fatherhood as he goes along that. And he always makes sure he asks myself and Drew, you guys tell me what to do. He never stops saying that. And, just to share with you, Donnovan and Drew go back a number of years. They used to play football together. So I always find it great to catch how they interact with each other because they know each other before this. So it's always a lot of fun to see how their interaction and how their friendship has still stayed solid after all these years. And again, getting back to that word community, right? Community again is very, very important in regards to the father piece. But yeah, Donnovan, he talks so much about the impact of his father in his journey and all those stories and the storytelling. And Donnovan, I hope you're watching this. I speak it that you tell those stories to your kids, the stories about you and your father to your kids, so it becomes generational. Mm-hmm. Carry on that Bennett legacy.
That's a great point. And that's a good takeaway for anyone who's listening, is that the more you can tell those stories to create that just memory is really important. The final thing I'll say is we know that research absolutely validates what we're talking about and what Donnovan was bringing to life through his story, that fathers play a significant part. That's what Dad Central was founded on, this research that when you have a positively involved father in the life of a child, it has significantly positive impact on their development as they grow. And so the more positively involved fathers can be, research just says it makes a big difference in helping children. So just want to put that point in there.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to you for your next moment.
Well, this father was definitely the funniest conversation we had out of all of them. Shannon Carpenter, who has been a stay-at-home dad for 11 or 12 years. And I tell you, if you want to see a master storyteller when it comes to fatherhood, this guy is the guy. And we did find out that he has a background doing stuff at Second City, and so he's really good at all that stuff. But I was going to put his story up about how his father had MS. And he said to us, and check the conversation out, he found out how he could get it, how he could get his dad to stand up because his dad was in a wheelchair. But he said there was a moment where he upset his father so much, and I'm using those words. He used another word. He upset his father so much that his father stood up in the wheelchair. And it was really great storyteller. But one of the key things, and this reflects also to, we have a course called Super Dad, Super Kids, which is a parenting course for fathers. And the first chapter is basically saying dads are super dads. And when Shannon said dads think that they're better than they are, he really wanted to tell dads, think positively of yourself, dads, think positive. Because a lot of dads don't take that time to say, hey, I'm important, I have value. And just take that time from running around doing this, doing that, and give themselves a pat on the back. You're doing stuff, you're trying your best. You're not perfect, but you're doing the best that you can. And interweaving that point with his stories was just very impactful. And I don't think, how many dads who are listening to this, when was the last time said you're doing a good job?
Mm-hmm. That's a great point, because dads often beat themselves up. I think we hear a lot from Dad Central. We're struggling, we're feeling like we've failed, or we're failing, or we just keep making mistakes. And so I certainly know that from personal experience. I've felt that many times as a dad. You make a mistake, you're like, oh man, like you just start to beat yourself up over it. And it can be really challenging if you're not able to identify the strengths, identify the good things that you are doing, and focus more on those. And I think that does happen a lot for dads. It doesn't help when we were talking about how society perceives us, or how others may look at you and you may not feel valued in the process. So then you start to devalue yourself. It can be really challenging, but that point there is so critical to say, here's what I'm doing well, here's the strengths I do have, and here's how I can apply them to be the dad that I want to be.
Yeah, one of the things I say to a lot of fathers and men is, don't worry about what you don't have, because what you have is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And as Shannon was, he was something else. Like, I'm still remembering that conversation. That was so much fun. But how many times you get a chance to speak to a father that's been intentionally, not by accident, but intentionally a stay-at-home dad for 11, 12 years, and really talking about, how him and his wife sat down and they made that conscious decision, and it's made him think better of himself, and it made him a great role model for his family.
Mhm.
And that builds up his self-esteem too.
Yeah. And let's not forget, he's an author. He wrote a book
Yes.
called The Ultimate
Yeah.
Stay-at-Home Dad, built off of
Yes.
his personal experiences, built off of the learnings that he's had to go through because there wasn't much going on for stay-at-home
No,
dads when he started. So he's essentially
no, there
written
wasn't.
the book. So if you're a stay-at-home dad and you're looking for some guidance, Shannon's book might be a great item for you to pick up. So really good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's put it back to you.
Okay. Well, this conversation was a really exciting one. It was with Jack Armstrong. And there are so many things that I could probably talk about because it just felt like a fireside chat with you, like a mentor. Like you could just take all of his wisdom and also his humor and his stories in. But what stood out to me was I think the message I received was you want to find ways to be significant for your kids, not just successful. And as much as we talk about, and our tagline is tools to raise confident, successful kids, sometimes this dose of perspective to help us focus on what really matters, to be significant, is really helpful. So to me, that means it's about relationship. He wanted to ensure that he built the right relationship, not only with his children, but when he talked about his coaching experiences as well. He was very focused on the relationship he had with the players that he coached. And obviously, you could see that as a father, but also as a partner with his wife. And I think that is a really powerful reminder. The relationship ultimately is the most important thing. And how do you build significance in that relationship with your child, no matter what the limitations or barriers might be? And because many dads face barriers, they may not even see their children. How do you build, but you can still do it. And so that to me is really the takeaway message. No matter where you are, dad, find ways to build the relationship with your child because that's the most significant influence you'll have on them as they grow.
Yeah, I want to build on that. And again, Jack is someone who we've spoke with on live before. So we had a little bit of knowing, but what I love about the significance is that Jack has a lot on his plate.
Mhm.
Like, for those who don't know him, he's the color commentator for the Toronto Raptors of the NBA. So he is on the go, especially during basketball season, all the time. So he is intentional about finding significance. And he did hail up to his wife, how much his wife plays a role in regards to significance in parenting with their kids. And I thought, Jack he's like a sage. He's like a wise sage. He's got the gray hair and all that, but he talks and for people that see him on TV, what he's like on TV is what he's like on a platform like this. He's a real deal. He's very reflective, and he just finds ways of significance. He said that word significance a lot. He said that a lot during the conversations that we've had with him. And I'll say it now that his main focus is not the basketball court, it's his kids. It's his kids being significant in his children's lives. They're all grown up now, but they're still very, very much an important place in his life and in his heart.
Absolutely. It was so evident the love that he had for his children and for his family. And that's a wonderful thing to see. All right, Ed, back to you. What's your next moment?
Niigaan Sinclair, talking about the lack of role models in the Indigenous communities, and very powerful conversation. Again, so many things could pull from just even his relationship with his father. That was a story in itself. And I really wanted to listen deeply to him because little backstory, about 2 or 3 weeks before the pandemic, before everything shut down, I had the opportunity to do a sharing session at a conference in the Northwest Territories with all their frontline social services staff about fatherhood. So I spent a few days up there and I saw the importance of elders in their community, especially male elders in the Indigenous community. And when he highlighted, I felt such a connection with him. I felt such a connection in regards to Indigenous communities, the importance of elders, and what he was speaking was right on. And not just role models in Indigenous communities, but you hear that a lot all over the place, whether it's Indigenous and other cultures, and how it's had a not positive impact to the Indigenous culture in general. And it was just getting it from his heart, not only his own lived experience, but the culture's lived experience with the lack of role models and how impactful that can be. So that really hit home for me. And he was a great storyteller too. Really great storyteller, but really hit home, and it just shows what we are doing is showing diversity in fatherhood, cultural diversity in fatherhood, and that bringing his perspective was so strong and powerful for me, and a message I'll never forget.
Hmm. I think Niigaan is a great model of authenticity and vulnerability. And in a way, though, that is designed to how you reflect, but also maybe even open yourself up to the realities of what his people have gone through and how he still wants to bring healing through that, though. And so to me, that was very powerful. And male role models are obviously, that's what Dad Central is built on, the influence of a father, but they're very much needed in those Indigenous communities. I believe there's a quote that we've used because we run a training called Into the Circle training for those who work with Indigenous communities, Indigenous fathers. But I don't have the quote here with me, but the quote was essentially saying that the greatest untapped resource in the lives of Indigenous children may very well be fathers. So if you want to change the trajectory of Indigenous communities and Indigenous youth, you need to engage Indigenous fathers in healing and in getting involved in the lives of their children. So the more you can do that, then this was from a Grand Chief who made that quote. So I think it just speaks to the importance of it and how much work there is to do there to help bring the positive impact.
Well, I would piggyback that that's just not Indigenous culture. I think it's in many a culture. And so whoever made that statement, very wise statement, very true statement, because I'll just put it out there. This is my opinion alone, that I think a lot of times the challenges we see in our culture, look at the role of the father in that family, and that can provide some answers on maybe some of the challenges that are being felt at that time. That's just my opinion. I'm going to ride with it, but I'm saying it on the Dad Central show. So I'm going to speak about it in regards to a dad thing. Absolutely. So very, very important that the male role models, and this includes caregivers too, because we know there's a lot of male caregivers also. So we're not leaving you out in this conversation. So fully agree with what you said there, Drew, and just adding on. So let's go next.
I have Jerrad Lopes. I mean, it was a great conversation. I think there were many parallels I felt in Jerrad sharing his story. What stands out is the question of how do you define success as a dad? And taking the exercise of looking back when you're 70, what would you want your kids to say about you? That to me, for busy dads or for dads who are stretched thin, it can be hard to know if you're doing the right things and really where you should put your energy and focus. And so I love Jared's picture of helping dads define success based on looking at the future and reflecting back on it. And so I think it helps you realize what truly matters to you. And that is the most important, I think, when you are having to make decisions based on today. If you have a long-term view of where success lies for you when it's all said and done. And it's very appropriate because as a coach, I love those types of reflective exercises that put people in positions to think about things they haven't necessarily thought of. But it's very practical because it helps you, as I said, make decisions for today based on the long-term view. And I think that's a really important thing that I think you have shared this as we've done different trainings. Dads don't always think about it in that way. And when they do, it's like a light bulb goes off though. And then they can begin to be very intentional in their choices.
Yeah, Jared was it's a great point in the conversation with him, and giving that perspective of what do I want my kids to say about me when they get older and I'm not around, and just putting that perspective a lot of times provides clarity or sets a light bulb in many a father's head when they're so looking at today, but what about the future? Because as always, probably most of the time dads are not going to be around to see their kids grow. So it's an important aspect, and Jerrad really highlighted that, and he was very introspective, very introspective when he spoke about it. So really appreciated the time he spent with us, and something tells me he's going to be back. I have a feeling there's just something telling me that we ain't finished with Jerrad yet. We're not finished with any of these fathers, by the way, but we're not finished with him yet. Anything else you want to add on it before we move on to the next one?
I think that dads can get caught. When you were talking just now, dads can get caught chasing things. And that's where the understanding, how do you define success? And it can really help you determine, am I chasing the right things? And will this pursuit that I have, because I think that's the way many of us are wired as men and as dads, is to go after things and get results. But are we getting results in the right place? And that's where it's really valuable. I just have a personal example. I had an opportunity a few years ago to take on a leadership role. My kids were really young, and I had twin 3-year-olds and I think a 1-year-old at the time. And I really struggled because I was like, yes, it's going to grow my career. It's exactly where I want to go. I thought, well, it wasn't exactly, but it was a leadership role stepping up from where I was. And I was like, yes, I was always about growth. I actually made the decision to decline the role because I didn't feel like it was the right fit. Plus, at that stage of our family, there was a lot that was required at home. And to be able to step into that new leadership role was going to probably take energy away from my ability to provide what my family needed at that time. That was just my personal decision. It was absolutely 100% the right decision for me. But I know that it could have gone the other way. And I know that I think many dads face similar decision points, and they may chase or pursue the things that they thought they wanted, but it may not bring about the result that actually is going to provide significance or long-term success. So just a personal story. I know what that's like.
No,
Over to you, your next moment.
Well, before we get there, I just want to add on to what you said. Many fathers that I help, there is a moment in their journey when they realize that what I was chasing isn't really worth it. And they begin reflecting on the family becomes more important than career. And so many fathers that I help have that moment where, wow, this isn't really all it's supposed to be. And they pull back and say, I've got to do a U-turn, or I got to reroute my fatherhood journey. So I think it's a very important point. And I think even more these days, and especially with millennial fathers, even more so, because they've seen, hey, I don't want to go through what my dad went through. Then that's a whole other conversation itself. But they say, you know what? I don't want to go down that path because I don't want to endure what my father had to go through. So you have another point, so go ahead.
One quote, it's from Andy Stanley. He says, the only unique leadership position that you'll ever have is that of a parent. Yeah. Every other leadership role you might take on in your life, you can be replaced, but you can never be replaced in the lives of your children. And so that put things in perspective for me. I thought it was a very powerful reminder of where leadership matters the most.
Yeah, Andy Stanley is right on. Very good leadership mentor, coach, etc. Jack Armstrong shows up again. And the reason why I brought up Jack Armstrong is, and I share this with a lot of people who know of him media-wise, but they don't realize that he has 3 adopted African-American sons. And I thought nothing like that has come up in any of our conversations. No point like this came up. And especially you got to realize, again, in the media, going all the time, and adopting 3 boys, and adopting 3 boys from a different culture than his own. How rare is that? How rare is that? I thought it was just phenomenal. And as I say, anyone who I share this fact with, their mind goes, what? Didn't know that? And they just get, wow. But one of the most powerful things he said in that conversation for me is, my sons make me better. They teach me. So it is enough. Yes, you are a father, but have a father who has 3 sons, different cultural background than him, and he respects them so much. He loves them so much. I think not only just him saying that, but it's such a strong statement for fathers who maybe can't have kids for whatever reason, or couples that can't have kids. thought it was such a beautiful moment, a beautiful statement, and an influential statement for him to say that on our platform. I think that was incredibly honest, incredibly sincere, and incredibly powerful.
I agree wholeheartedly. And his example was really powerful. And we clearly saw the love that he had from what could have been a hard situation. You mentioned fathers or families who can't have children. Obviously, that was Jack and his wife's situation. He's talked about the relationship with his wife at the time and how I remember particularly said, I married you regardless of whether we could have kids or not. Like, I married you for you, but we can work through this. And their example, I think, is a really powerful example of great teamwork as a partnership, but also a great love and focusing on relationship. And it was really wonderful. Great point.
Yeah, yeah, and also too, again, the involvement of his partner, his wife, because he's off and about, and she's there at all the games, all the sports, all these things. And I would have loved to have been the first time she went to one of their sons' games. I would have just loved to have seen the look in the audience. I would have loved to have seen the look in the audience, because I'm sure there's some people who sort of go, what's this going on? And there are probably still some people that are going, but you know what? They are dedicated to their children, and just the love Jack and his wife have for their children and the men that they've become. He is so proud of them. It's just a beautiful, beautiful statement. So we already talked about Jack enough, so we'll keep it short on Jack on this one. We're gonna go back to you.
Well, the last one I have is Dr. Charles Daniels. He had a very simple statement opening up, but it was laced throughout our conversation, is the idea of turning your pain into purpose. He obviously shared his personal story and the pain of wondering, like, was it his fault? What was going on? Why wasn't his father involved as he grew? And that really resonated for me. I have a personal story of a challenging experience growing up, and also having a father my biological father, who from the time of 7, really wasn't in my life. And so I connected a lot with that. And actually, it's part of how I used to describe when I started this journey of engaging fathers and working with fathers, working really with myself, is I felt that childhood experience that I had, while very painful, I felt there was a purpose in it, because it brought me to this place of real deep work on engaging myself as a father, growing myself as a father, and then connecting and engaging with others who had a passion to support fathers and engaging and supporting fathers. So it really aligned with, I think, who I am as well. And to hear his story and the work that they're doing at Fathers Uplift and the way they're doing it, again, really aligned with some of the things that I believe in and what I hope we can continue to parallel in some of the work that we're doing at that Central.
Yeah, great. When I see the heart work that Dr. Daniels is doing, is very intentional. It's coming right from the heart. They know their purpose, but he has a big vision. He has a really big vision, and nothing's going to stop him from realizing this vision. And yeah, some of his fatherhood journey, not only with his father, but sometimes in his marriage, were some pain. And he found a way of overcoming the pain to not only make it purposeful fathering for himself, but purposeful fathering for other fathers. It's just so rich, so deep. And he's doing some great stuff. Like all these gentlemen here are doing great stuff. He's doing great stuff because his big vision, and I have a feeling he's going to achieve it. He's going to be helping many fathers, not only in this country, but maybe around the world. So great conversation with Dr. Daniels, and kudos to the hard work that he's doing.
Absolutely. Well, Ed, share with us your final moment.
My final moment. Black Fathers Roundtable with Roger Dundas of BuyBlacks.com and Matt Prestbury of the Black Fathers Group on Facebook. I'm a blessed individual because, funny enough, these two individuals had never met each other before. And I've known Roger for a long time, very close and personal friend, and digitally have become a good associate with Matt Prestbury. I said, you know what? I'm just going to bring these guys together. And incredible conversation. Within the first 5 minutes, they were like twin brothers of different mothers. And that was just made the conversation so wonderful. But both of them throughout the conversation talked about how important it is to have a community if you're a father. And Drew mentioned it earlier, and it always comes up in most of our conversations about having a community. I know Drew is very, very strong in this area and very passionate about having that village, having that community of dads, elders, male, female, etc., helping you during that father journey. Because if you're a father and you're trying to do it alone, I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's an uphill climb. And one of the things that I've learned, not only from this conversation, but all these other conversations, they've all talked about, hey, I needed help and I reached out. And both Roger, both Matt, they're very involved. Yes, they have businesses to run, they have families to run, but they make time to reach out to other dads, whether it's if something they don't know what to do, or elders, if it's something they need help on, or if they want to just see what's going on with other fathers in their community, they're intentional about it. So having a village intentionally, both of them really pride themselves on, and certainly give that suggestion to the other fathers and those who love them, and also caregivers out there. So great conversation. It was just magical to have two gentlemen from two different countries. It was our first international conversation to come together and just rock the house.
It was a great conversation. I'm sorry I missed it. I wasn't able to be part of it, but I certainly listened to all of it and heard the wisdom and insight that both Matt and Roger had to share. I really resonated with Matt's final call out to Black fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that to me is a really important message that Black fathers in particular, but every father needs to certainly embrace. And so it was a great conversation, and I'm really honored that we were able to bring that forward and have both Roger and Matt's perspective.
Good stuff. So what's next? Are we gonna do more shows?
Of course, we're doing more shows. In fact, I think we've got a recording coming up next week. And of course, we've got looking for a lineup of continued great guests, great stories to help give dads tools that they can use to raise confident, successful kids, but also to be the best versions of themselves that they can be. So I just look forward to continuing to engage, continue to have our audience find value in the work that we're doing, and continue to create content that's going to help in whatever age, stage, or area that dads or those who support dads are.
I kudos to that, and I endorse that. I don't know if Drew's running for office, but I endorse that message. And it's been a great ride. It's going to get even better. We want to thank everyone who's watched or listened to even 10 seconds of a conversation. We appreciate you. And if you enjoyed, as we always say, share it out, get people to subscribe, and we make it happen. We do what we can. And we always want to say the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there is positive impact. If you have any questions, suggestions, guest suggestions for us, please email us at podcast@dadcentral.ca. Certainly visit our website. We get a lot of people from all around the world coming to the website. Have you gone to the website? If not, why not? And those that are going, thank you and keep it up. dadcentral.ca is the podcast. dadcentral.ca is the website. So we got it all covered. I want to say thanks everyone for your support. We're going to keep on doing it. Keep on listening. To all the fathers out there, you have value. Take care, be well, and keep the faith, and we will chat with you soon. Bye-bye.